Okay, and just to remind everyone that this session is being recorded. So again, just as some basic administrative requests, please keep your mics on mute until you're asked to speak, and then unmute yourself. It would be nice to see your lovely faces as well, so Alex can see our Copernicus community in its entirety. And we'll just give it a few more minutes to let people show up. Okay, well, we'll start off just to be mindful of the time. I'm sure other people will be coming on board. So before I introduce Alex, I just want to let everyone know that the session is being recorded. It's an open format, so we're going to hear from Alex and share his COVID story. But you're allowed to ask questions, and you can ask them in English or Polish. So I'm going to switch to Polish for, so just allow me a few moments. So ja chcę, że wszyscy czują się, że możesz rozmawiać po polsku czy po angielsku i nie krępić się, że ty będziesz coś pytać, że to nie jest dobrze, czy może ty czujesz się, że ty wstydzisz się pytać. To jest dlaczego myśmy jesteśmy razem, myśmy jesteśmy jeden rodzina, jeden Copernicus i myśmy uczą się jeden drugiego. So I'm just saying, please don't hesitate to ask your questions, whether you feel comfortable speaking in English or Polish, or even my English, Polish, heavy English accent. It's okay. You're in a safe environment. Everything is fine. We want this to be as comfortable and as easy for anyone who's participating in today's session. Okay, so on that note, I want to introduce our guest speaker, Alex Kopacz. And as I've been promoting, and as the Copernicus has been promoting as well, we all know that, you know, Alex is a gold medal Olympic athlete from bobsleigh. So he participated in the 2018 Winter Games at Pyeongchang, South Korea. But in addition to him being a gold medalist, he's also very multi-talented. He participated and gave a TED Talk presentation about his experiences. So that was fantastic. And it's very well worth listening to if you want to Google his TED Talk. He also graduated from the University of Western Ontario with a mechanical engineering degree. He's participated in volunteerism. He did a stint in Guatemala. He also is a musician. He plays the guitar and the piano, apparently, and multilingual. So he speaks German and Polish. And he's there's just another, like, umpteen accolades that I can talk about Alex. But we're so lucky that Alex has agreed to come and share his story with both the staff and with our families and with our greater community. So I pass the baton on to Alex, and Alex will be sharing with us his COVID story.
Thanks very much, Mary. Thank you. Witam wszystkich. Chciałem powiedzieć, pani Oszulik, widzę, że pani bardzo ładnie się ubrała. Ja też lubię niebieskie mieć czasami and bym chciał widzieć, kto też ubrał się ładnie dzisiaj dla tego Zoom spotkanie. All right, who we have here now? Oh, Andrew and Joanna, almost saw you guys. No, okej, dobra, so zacznę po polsku albo po angielsku. Chyba zrobię po polsku pierw. To było tak, poszłem na wycieczkę do Calgary, nie że wycieczka, ale więcej taki trip taki biznesowy. Stworzyłem nowa firma i byłem tam 6 dni. To było w kwietniu to chyba 6 kwietnia byłem w Calgary. To czyli zacząłem z Toronto i z Toronto do Calgary i tam byłem 6 dni i podczas tych 6 dni może 6 osób zobaczyłem. I powrót. Calgary z powrotem do Toronto i Toronto oczywiście do London, ale Toronto do London to było w samochodzie i byłem tam z moim business partner. I za 3 dni potem od razu miałem gorączkę, ale strasznie okropna gorączka. To czyli moja średniowo temperatura było 39 stopni. Mam nadzieję, że wszyscy wiedzą, co znaczy gorączka, która już jest pomiędzy 38, może 40 stopni. To po prostu nie czuję się dobrze. Nie, że ja miałem jakieś halucynacje, ale nie było przyjemne. To czyli poniedziałek byłem w London, środa to już miałem gorączkę i czwartek zaczął kaszleć ostro. I po prostu było tak, że nie było przerwy między gorączka i moje kaszel. I ze 6 dni później to zacząłem kaszleć krew i mówiłem, że dość, idę do szpitalu. I po pierwszy dzień w szpitalu oni powiedzieli, idź do domu, bierz ze sobą takiego małego maszyna do diagnostyki. To było, żeby zmierzyć ilość procent miałem tlenu w mojego krwi. To może było nawet nie 10 godzin po tym. Czułem się strasznie tak, nie że zemdlałem, ale czułem się, że idę w ten kierunek. I sprawdzałem tego maszyna do diagnostyki i pokazało, że było 78% tlenu w mojego krwi. Czyli normalnie człowiek ma 98% tlenu w krwi. No i poszłem od razu do szpitalu znowu i już mówili, ok, teraz że jesteś i musimy patrzeć, jak tlen wygląda i jak to będzie następne parę godzin. I od razu wysłali mnie do 4. piętra w szpitalu i tam kontrolują ludzi, którzy mają po prostu korona. To zaczęli robić badanie na krwi, dali mi tlen i za koniec może pierwszego dnia w szpitalu, może średnio, powiem tak, że może o 14 godzina drugiego dnia w szpitalu, to było jasne, że idzie coraz gorzej. No oni przyszli do mnie i powiedzieli, ok, dobra, jesteśmy doktorzy, taka specjalna grupa, jak to jest nazwane po polsku? No tak po angielsku jest Infectious Disease Team, czyli specjalizacje na takie rodzaje zakażenia. I powiedzieli mi, że słuchaj, jest tak, wygląda, że twoje ciało idzie w taki kierunek, że twoje organizm będzie takie straszne, takie ostre, ekstremalne ochrona. To czyli co się dzieje jest, twój organizm chce chronić do tego wirusa i przez ten proces dostajesz takie, jak to jest, ten inflammation, to wszystko ci tak spuchnie w krwi i twoje płuca i tak dalej, i czyli płuca przerwają się, czyli dalej nie będziesz mógł oddychać. I potem oczywiście serce, będzie to jakiś atak i po prostu koniec życia. To powiedzieli mi, że muszę decydować, mam 6 godzin, czy będę brał jakieś nowoczesne medykamenty do tego procesu, albo nie. I jak będę tego brał, to oni tylko wiedzieli, że jest ilość procent, że będzie sukces, że będzie działało, albo nie. I jak będzie działało, jest też możliwe, że pan dostanie tuberculosis. I oni nie mieli czasu, żeby sprawdzić mojego geny, czy ja miałem to, czy nie. I oczywiście dla mnie sytuacja była jasna, że ok, ja to nie zrobię, nie mam pewności, czy przeżyję. to od razu zacząłem dzwonić do rodzicy, koledzy, koleżanki i musiałem się żegnać ze wszystkim. Bo wszelki wypadek, że się nie uda, to ale żal by było, że nie mogłem powiedzieć ostatnie słowa do tych ludzi, którzy są bardzo blisko do mnie. No i tak, to zaczęli ten proces, dali medycyny i dzięki Bogu za 24 godzin już było jasne, że przerwali ten atak od mojego organizmu i że już miałem okazję, żeby zgoić się naturalnie. Ale czyli już byłem w szpitalu 3 dni i ogólnie ten cały okres korony dla mnie było 9 dni. I oczywiście płuce już byli zniszczone. To jeżeli bym chciał, czy nie chciał, to kaszłem bez przerwy. I powiedzieli, OK, widać, że jesteś w kondycji, że możesz iść do domu. I 5. dzień po południu wysłali mnie do domu i miałem wystarczająco tlenu, żebym miał śmiało codziennie, żeby był taki constant. I może 2 tygodnie później już mogłem mniej tlenu używać, więcej chodzić, ale byłem taki słaby, strasznie słaby. I oczywiście dla mnie, że słabość to nie ma znaczenia. Ja zawsze byłem najsilniejszy, najszybszy i tak dalej. I podczas mój okres w szpitalu zgubiłem prawie 30 funty. Wyobrażacie to, 30 funty 4 dni. To było naprawdę ciężki okres dla mnie. No i faktycznie na sam koniec przeżyłem. Dużo się nauczyłem od tego momentu. I rzecz sobie takiej dobrej niespodziankę od ojca. On powiedział, że poszedł i dostał szczepionek, bo on się tak bał, co się stało do mnie, że to mogło się stać do niego. I oczywiście, że można powiedzieć, że to może reaguje gorzej na ludzi, którzy mają jakieś geny i są inne osoby, które mają inny rodzaj geny i to nie ma jakiś efekt. To czyli kolega, który poszedł ze mną, mój business partner, to on miał prawie nic, ale on jest taki facet, który nie ćwiczy, je byle co i pali. To byście myśleli, że to by było odwrotnie, żeby to jego by atakowało i dla mnie to by było nic. Ale niestety miałem pech i też szczęście, że przeżyłem. Mogę naprawdę powiedzieć, że to mnie naprawdę był taki wzruszający moment, że 31 lat i już musiałem może żegnać się z moim życiem. I to mi dużo zmieniło. Czyli na temat mój widok na życie. I teraz powiem tak krótko po angielsku. So the entire time that I was sick with COVID, it started very quickly. It headed to a very extreme position where it almost killed me. And it only, from start to finish, it was no more than 6 to 8 days. And during the time that I was in the hospital, it was the end of day 6 of me trying to manage it at home. And I just couldn't. I wasn't sleeping. I was barely getting enough oxygen from the coughing that just wouldn't stop. And the fever was making me delirious and just full body aches, just uncomfortable. And by the time they put me in the hospital, they escalated me up to the COVID floor. And from there, the infectious disease team, just through my blood diagnoses, saw that what was coming was what they call a cytokine storm. And that's when an inflammation wave takes over the body and it will shut down the lungs because your lungs can't handle that much inflammation. They gave me an experimental drug. And they asked me if, they didn't just give me, they asked me if I wanted to consider this. And I was in a position where there was nothing to negotiate with. There was no thought to be made. I had to take the chance to see if it would help. And very thankfully, it worked. And if anyone's curious, it's a kind of drug that suppresses the immune system. So it's incredible fast thinking from the infectious disease team, because it would have probably put me on a ventilator. And then from there, who knows? So after my time in the hospital, they sent me home on the 5th day. And on the 5th day, from that day forward, I had about 2 weeks of oxygen every single day. I slept with it on, wore it. Walking was difficult, so it would feel like I'd pass out within a couple steps. And by the time I got into week 3 and 4 afterwards, I was taking my dog for a walk, trying to be outside more, started to feel stronger, started to gain some weight back. As I said in Polish, I lost almost 30 pounds within 4 days in the hospital. So overall, I'm very, very happy that the people that I gave it to didn't have any severe reactions, because I did pass it to 6 people once I got back home. And it wasn't my parents, which was great, but 2 athletes that I'm training. And then they passed it on to a family member. And there was 2 other people in the neighborhood that, just from seeing them in the street, just saying hi before I got really sick, they got it as well. And the one thing that was a happy surprise is that the whole thing scared my dad so badly that he ended up getting his vaccination, because he was pretty convinced that if it was going to almost kill me, as it would kill him. So it definitely made me think very differently about the entire pandemic and how seriously to take it. Na początku tego całej pandemii, przez to, że ja jestem taki silny i zdrowy, ja to poważnie nie brałem. Miałem maski, myłem ręce, trzymałem jakiś dystans, ale tak ogólnie myślałem, że co to mi zrobi. Ale przez to, że tak ostro chorowałem, oczywiście zmienił mój wygląd na ten całej pandemii, bo widać, że tego wirus to do tej pory to nie jest jasne, czemu atakuje jedna osoba gorzej niż drugiemu. Mają może parę takie pomysły, ale będzie może jeszcze 2 lata, dopóki będą wiedzieli dokładnie, na przykład, pan przychodzi z Polski, czy do słowiańskie kraje, to czyli te ludzie, którzy mają te geny, powinny się obawiać. Ale nie jest jasne, bo nie atakuje wszyscy ludzie z tej grupy. I więc właśnie mamy na przykład te statystyki, że 93% gdziekolwiek ich kraj ludzie przeżyją. Ale co nie mówią jest, ile ludzie żyją i mają jakieś negatywne efekty poza tym. I w moim sytuacji to mam scar tissue, czyli, no przepraszam bardzo, brak mi słów tutaj, szybko zrobię scar tissue, czyli tkanka bliznowata w mojej płucy. Nie wszędzie, ale wystarczając, że ja czuję te efekty, jak ja staram się troszeczkę szybciej biegać niż normalnie, ale jestem też wdzięczny, że ja nie uprawiam sportu. Już rezygnowałem, złoty medal to mi starczają. To patrzę do przodu, ale są ludzie, mam parę kolegów, którzy uprawiają sportu i niestety oni nie mogą dalej robić, bo nie mają możliwości, żeby wystarczająco tlenu dostać, jak oddychają, bo te płuce są niestety takie zniszczone. To czyli na sam koniec tylko mogę powiedzieć, że moja historia to jest więcej, żeby chyba przekazać, że ludzie powinni nie, jak to powiedzieć, gambling, losować? Gambling. Że nie warto losować na własne życie i zdrowie i to nie ma sensu. Na sam koniec są wiele osób, które boją się te szczepionki, przepraszam. I ja mogę to zrozumieć. Mogę. Ale żeby porównywać ryzyka, żeby mieć szczepionek albo nie mieć szczepionek, to nie pasuje. I na sam koniec, na przykład, jak ja bym miał szczepionek, to ja bym nie miał aż takie ekstremalne symptomy. I to też jest, jeżeli bym miał okazję, to jest czasy przeszłym, ale jakbym miał okazję, żeby to mieć, bym nie poszedł do szpitalu. To jest rzecz pewna. I mnie na pewno by nie zabiło, ale to nie znaczy, żebym nie dostał. To mogę powiedzieć, że jestem dumny, że mam moja pierwsza runda szczepionek i czekam, żeby wysłuchać, czy mogę wcześniej dostać druga runda, ale na teraz w wrześniu mam mojego terminu. Nie wiem, czy ktoś ma jakieś pytanie, to śmiało, proszę, mówcie, a jak nie, to też jest w porządku. If anyone's got any questions, please feel free. I was just sharing how it changed my opinion on getting the vaccine and some of the fears that are behind it. And the realization I had was how if I had had it prior to me getting sick, it would have stopped me from going to the hospital. It might not have stopped me from getting sick, but it would have stopped me from having such life-threatening symptoms. And that's something that I think is worth considering and not gambling on. I would have not been able to live with myself if I knew that I gave someone the virus and they had it as bad as I did. And if it killed them, it would weigh very heavy on my shoulders. And it's not worth it. So, yeah,
So
just
Alex,
a story is a story of caution.
So Alex, just to repeat, you did infect some other people because you mentioned that in Polish, but just for some of the families who.
Oh, apologies if I didn't translate that portion.
Yeah,
I gave it to 6 different people, and it wasn't directly to 6; it was directly to 3, and they passed it indirectly to well, the 3 others, but it wasn't like 1-to-1. And that scared me the most. And the people that kept checking in on me that got sick from me, they were very scared, and they called me daily. Oh, how bad is it now? What are you feeling? How did it start? And it just made me feel like a monster that I gave it to them because I'm not sure what to tell them. It's like, it's getting worse. I hope it doesn't go this bad for you. I'm very sorry. It's an awful feeling. So hopefully no one gives it willingly. I don't think anyone would.
And the people that you passed it on, did they have to go to hospital, or they were able to manage it at home?
No, thankfully they were able to manage it at home, and they had very mild symptoms. I was very relieved when I found out that it was just very, very easy for them.
And just again for the translation, so your partner that you went on this business trip with, you had mentioned that he's a smoker, I guess a drinker.
Yeah, just doesn't want to take much care of himself.
But he got it, but it was mild compared to you.
Yes, very much. He only lost his smell and taste, and maybe had a headache, but that was it. And we were in the same situation. So I would have guessed that he would have had it worse, and that I would have had to, just kind of shake it off. But it seems that we still don't know clearly what is the genetic situation that each person has to have for it to be extreme case or an easier case. And I'm sure they'll find out in a couple more years.
Okay. Well, thank you, Alex. So families, this is your chance to ask specific questions, or if you need Alex to repeat things. Again, not all of our Polish is great, so don't feel shy or embarrassed, because Alex is here to provide us to answer your question. So Christine, thank you for being first up. So go ahead.
So Alex, you had said I've heard part of your story. I believe that you had a short speech for Sheridan's graduation. So that's where I had heard of your story first. But what is it that they gave you in the hospital? What was the drug? Apparently you had called it a lottery or something the first time.
No, the drug's called tocilizumab or tocilizumab. And it's immunosuppressant. And at the time it was, and to my knowledge currently, it is still in short supply, very short supply, and in very high demand. And it was, there was 3 months, when they gave it to me, they had 3 months worth of data from using it on patients. And it had shown promise, but not a guaranteed solution. And that was a tough decision to make, because is it worth the risk once your back is against the wall? And in my case, the answer is yes. Doing a dangerous sport like bobsled, you kind of learn to live with X amount of risk. But there are they can be very serious complications with taking a drug like that.
Which are?
Your immune system is shut down, so infections, and then as I mentioned, the Polish version, I forgot to translate it, and I apologize, everyone. I could have got tuberculosis, and that's something that can either be hiding in your genes. And if they don't have your family history, or if there isn't anything clear in your family history, they don't have time to do a genetic screening, because they had to do it. There it was, trial by fire, yes or no.
Well, you know what? Family history is great if you have it.
Exactly.
Many of us have the family history when, you went to see the doctor when you were sick and that was it. There was no history. You died,
Mm-hmm.
you died kind of thing. So, well, it's great to hear that you're doing better. Do you have, besides the scar tissue, I understood, you have scar tissue on your lungs, correct?
Yeah, and I'm very happy that it's not everywhere, just in some portion of the lobe. So let's just say loosely 6% of my lungs have scar tissue now.
Okay.
I did a study at Robarts where they did a series of MRI tests and pulmonary stress tests to see how I was doing. So overall, I considering how badly it went, I've walked away with some pretty easy lasting effects.
So, okay, so the scar tissue is the lasting, but there's nothing else, correct?
To date.
Okay.
And actually something, I apologize very much, something that creeped up within the second week was I developed clots everywhere, all inside my lungs, around my lungs, in my neck, in my legs. It's extremely painful process. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. I don't think anyone was expecting that I would develop clots. Same thing, young age. Why would it happen? The virus causes clotting to happen. And again, this is something that has a lot to do with the immune response. And if it hijacks the immune response and sets it into overdrive, if the virus doesn't kill you through your lungs, it might kill you through a clot to the brain.
Right. Well, thank God that you're good. You went through it. It's nothing that we wish anyone to go through, definitely.
No, of course not.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina.
Well, Mary, it's John. Could I ask a question?
Yes, John, go for it.
Go ahead.
Oh, hi, Alice. Listen, we're all glad that you survived this, and hopefully going forward everything works out well. I just am interested in your business partner. Was it ever established that you get it from him or her, or was there a way that they could trace how you got it? Was it on the plane from others? Do you know how many on that plane to Calgary and back were actually infected as well, or do they do that kind of tracing to say, Alex, you got it from point A individual or not?
Now, the answer is yes and no. So yes, they do try to find where the points, where the vector of the virus, so the virus being the vector, is entering a cascade effect of people getting sick. And in my case, there would have to be two passenger manifests that they'd have to go through. And that would have been the people traveling to Calgary if they stayed in Calgary, and then the people returning from Calgary. So both ways of Toronto there, Calgary, Toronto back. Then there's the reality that it could be anywhere within the Toronto airport. It's impossible for them to completely disinfect the entire airport. I'm sure they try. They probably do like a mister thing in the mornings. So it could be in that public open space, in the airplanes, and it was packed on the way back, and it could have been in Calgary. Now, personally, when I was kind of going backwards to make sure that anyone that I interacted with in Calgary didn't have it, they all went and they got tested, and all of them, everyone that I spoke to was negative. Now, my partner, he got it, and I got it. Now, is it possible I got it from him? Maybe he got it from me. But the challenging part about the virus and when it shows up in your body, it could be anywhere from 2 days to 2 weeks. So perhaps we got it in London, and perhaps it slowly started to manifest itself throughout that 6-day business trip. And by the time I got back, it was full on. Now, where I don't think it was a 2-week incubation period for me is because one of my athletes living with me, he had symptoms within a day or two. So I'm fairly convinced that it happened quick and fast. And I think it could have been as simple as on the flight home or in the airport before we hit back into the car.
That's very interesting. The other thing is you mentioned that 6 people may have been infected through you, 3 directly and 3 indirectly. So that they did contact tracing, or you provided the names of people you were in contact with, and then they followed up on that. Is that how that works?
I called them myself and I told them to get checked.
Okay. And how much time did they spend with you? I'm trying to find it. Passing
It was
5 minutes, half an hour, an hour.
truly the difference between, so some of the people, it was a conversation on the sidewalk, 5 minutes. Wow. We didn't kiss. We were just walking as I had my dog.
Wow. Wow.
And then the others, it was, we're in each other's space, right? In the training environment, I have 2 athletes. And as I mentioned, the one, he lives with me. So it was just, there's nothing that, had I known in advance, we would have isolated everybody, but it didn't strike until it struck. And then it was too late because you're infectious prior to getting sick. And I think that's what really scared me the most, is it became impossible to know who gave it to me. And I felt ashamed calling the people that I may have gotten sick. And some of them took it very graciously, and some of them were very angry with me. And I didn't choose to give them the virus, and I didn't choose to get it, if that makes any sense. I think that's one of the hardest things to live with. Had it killed someone, that would have weighed on my conscience. Whether it's correct or incorrect, I was a part of that chain that led to that. I mean, it's a global pandemic. It's everyone's responsibility to try and stay healthy and safe. But if I was part of that chain, it would be really tough to live with.
Oh, thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions, families? Don't be shy. In English or in Polish?
Yeah,
hello?
maybe,
hello?
Okay,
yes,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Hi, it's Joe calling. So Alex, thank you for this, and Mary, thank you for having Alex. Of those 6 people that contacted the virus from you, were they vaccinated?
No. Keep in mind, by April, a lot of the people in my cohort, we weren't ready to receive it yet. And if you look at the cascading when they started rolling out who could get what, unless you were a healthcare worker, 40 years and under weren't really getting any access to it. And of course, people could have their ways to get it, depending if you were in a high infectious zone. But in London, it wasn't our time.
Okay, and just I have a little bit of a theory that people that smoke may have sort of an antibody in their lungs, and I would be very curious if the medical profession, I'm sure they don't want to do this, but if they would give us some statistics on how it affects smokers and not smokers.
And I'm sure it's out there. To be honest, if you did a little bit of looking, you might see that there's already a trend. Now, to say that there's less surface area in the lungs, less healthy surface area in the lungs for the virus to attach, maybe there's something there. But the problem is it doesn't have to necessarily go into the lungs and go into the eyes, the nose, the mouth. There's many different ways, and but I could see some sense into what you're saying, but I would hate to use that as my my protection, my smoking history.
Well, I agree. Okay, thank you for that.
No problem.
Ed, I think you had a question. Go ahead. Because you were competing with Joe. Is there another question? Or
yeah, WOZ guy. Is that Ed?
No, it was,
Yeah, no, yeah, it's
yes.
Andrzej Woźniak.
Andrzej, proszę. Czuwaj.
Szczepotchale, Andrzej Woźniak. For the rest of you, ja znam Alexa, bo przez naszą organizację harcerską ZHP wiem, że jest harcerzem i słyszeliśmy właśnie o właśnie tej, chciałem powiedzieć przygoda, to nie była przygoda, ale się cieszę właśnie, że słyszymy od druha i że druh się lepiej czuje. Co chciałem się zapytać, także druh ma ten scar tissue, czy to znaczy, że druh nie będzie mógł dalej brać udziału w tym sporcie, czy jakoś wyjdzie, że będzie dalej mógł robić trening i brać udział w zawodach?
Tak jak ja się czuję teraz, bym powiedział, jest możliwe, że bym mógł dalej robić ten sport, ale tak ogólnie już miałem wiele operacji, kręgosłup, kolana, już chyba dość na temat sportu. Ale na przykład z moim atleci to raz na jakiś czas ja robię, pokazam jak technika ma wyglądać, jak to ma się czuć i tak dalej. I jestem w szoku, jak szybko gubię energii. 2 kroki i czuję, że tak jakby krwi uciekło z głowy na przykład. To jest nieprzyjemne. Ale jakbym naprawdę by się skupił, to ja bym powiedział, jestem może jedyny, nie że jedyny, ale jeden z tych ludzi, który mogą dalej dać sobie radę w jakiś ekstremalny sport najważniejsza rzecz, czemu mogę to zrobić, jest, że sport, na przykład sanki, to człowiek musi używać sprint i w sprint to dużo tlenu nie jest potrzebne w momentu. A jakbym zrobił na przykład coś, gdzie ja biegam takie na stało, to by się nie udało. W ogóle by się nie udało.
Okej, dziękuję. No i czuwaj.
Nie ma za to, czuwaj.
A z drugiej strony też pozdrowienia. Jestem na Kaszubach i żałujemy, że no w tym roku znowu nie będzie obozów i na razie nie możemy mieć zbiórki, ale mam nadzieję, że jak wszyscy się szczepią i to wszystko przejdzie, to wrócimy do pracy z młodzieżą. A
Właśnie.
jeszcze raz czuwaj.
Dziękuję bardzo. Tęsknię za Kaszuby, to już prawie 10 lat już tam nie byłem.
A no to trzeba wrócić. Bardzo śliczne powietrze mamy.
Właśnie.
So Christina, you have a question? Go ahead. And you're on mute. Unmute yourself, please.
Okay. Hi, Alex. Nice meeting you. I was just wondering, you said you mentioned that you met people outdoors. Now, were you distancing, or were they perhaps coughing or speaking closely to you, or how was it? I thought that when we were outside meeting with people, then it was highly unlikely, or it'd be highly unlikely to get anything on us.
And Christina, you said it very well. Highly unlikely, but not impossible. Now, I didn't measure the distance between me and my neighbors, for example, and we weren't grouped together. Generally, I have a dog; they have dogs, and in passing, we usually It wasn't like a drive-by. We stopped and said, "Hey," he said, "how was your trip to Calgary?" And I said, "Oh, it was great.
Right.
You know, the flight and all that was packed. I was surprised to see that." And then following that, as I got more sick. And that's the thing is, let's say I saw the person Monday night. I don't remember exactly which day I saw which person, but between Monday and Wednesday is where I saw the preliminary 3 people. And I didn't notice anything at first. And then by the time I was getting very sick, I reached out and I said, "Hey, get checked." And I wasn't able to get my test done until the Friday.
Oh, okay.
And that was, I think it's a ridiculous scenario that I had to wait so long to get tested. But it was one of those things where it's like, you can't get tested because you have no symptoms. And then you have symptoms, so you can't come in to get tested because you might pass it on to someone else. So then you should go to the hospital. And this is kind of this thing where I just put the word out and I tried to be as proactive as possible.
Right. So quite a bit of time had passed and they could have passed on to somebody else.
That's
It's
right.
possible. So so basically you were just passing in the street and meeting on the street, like we all do. Nothing was indoors in a closed environment.
No, and the only one immediately would be the athlete living with me. And that was one where he had no, it was just, unfortunately, I'm sure we could have done anything. If I had known in advance, I would have sent him to, let's say, to my parents before I even got to the house, so that he was isolated completely away from me. Because I'd hate to destroy his opportunity to go to the Olympics because he got sick. And that was it was a hard time. It was a hard time because, I'm helping this kid become as strong and fast as possible. And then now he's sick with something that I gave him. It was a terrible, terrible moment.
Right. And another question, were you wearing a mask on board the flight, or did you ever remove it to have anything to drink or eat?
Well, with regards to eating, yes. Never fully off, slip down, take a bite, have a drink, but mask on the entire flight, such as it was. And the other thing being with the flights, they have HEPA filters, and they're clearly not bulletproof. But I can't say if I got it from the plane.
Right, you don't know.
Or if it was in passing somewhere else. But it makes sense in such a tightly grouped space that if it could have been anywhere, it would have been in an airplane.
Okay, that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
No, of course, no problem.
Any other questions, families?
Alex, it's Yola Edwards. Question. I'm not sure when you contracted the virus, but according to the CDC, you were probably not in the expected group to contract it at the time that you contracted it? I
don't know if I would say that. I think I am, or I'm supposed to be in the expected group that wouldn't have any symptoms.
Right,
or if they did,
exactly.
It'd be very, very, very trivial.
Right, exactly. And so therefore, if that's the case, you should never, and the vaccine wasn't available to you either at the time. No. And so therefore you should never, ever feel responsible that you ever,
thank you very much, Yola, for saying so.
Gave it to anybody, because you were not in the expected group and you were protected by the CDC for that.
I appreciate that. It's thank you. It's a stupid thing that I'm sure we all feel that. Whether it's a scenario where, let's say, okay, I had a friend of mine had cancer, older than me, but still we were friends. And things moved very quickly, and I still was left with guilt that I should have done more to help or something. And I'm sure everyone has a story where they feel this guilt in the back, and whether it's logical or not, it exists. And no, thank you for reinforcing that, Yola. I definitely took steps to help mitigate those feelings, because it's definitely it's not fair to do to yourself. That's for sure.
But I'm sorry that those people that were angry with you because they had no cause to be. Yeah. Because it wasn't your responsibility.
I appreciate you for saying so.
And so, Alex, just because you had mentioned this in Polish, so you have gotten the first shot, and you're waiting to get the second shot, but it's based on your schedule, I guess, and working with your health providers. Have they suggested when you can get your second shot?
So once I got the first one, that's I think it's almost close to a month ago today. They had said that we'll book in advance. They wanted to put a buffer of like 3 to 4 months or so. So the next time that then it was available was in September. So I already have that booked for September. But in the last, I want to say 2 weeks or so, there's regular checkups from the COVID clinic in London. Usually they're doing that to patients that were in the hospital and had it quite badly. By the time, so again, around 2 weeks ago, they were saying that there was new evidence to suggest that a person could get it sooner, and they wouldn't have to wait all that time. And I assume the push to do that would be so that we're all, could be vaccinated sooner with both doses, and then, ride out the year with confidence that it wouldn't really affect us that harshly.
And have you noticed a change in your health with the vaccine? Because I've read that people who got COVID, they noticed when they got the vaccine that some of their symptoms weren't as annoying.
Yeah, it went away.
Yeah. I don't know if that's proven, because I don't think that there's enough data yet.
No, not yet.
But in your case,
in my case, I didn't notice any improvement, and I think that's largely to do with the fact that just lung damage is lung damage. So that just kind of was what it was. I did have a fever the next day after the injection, and then by the end of the day, it was gone, and that was that. And by the way, it's a good thing that your body reacts to it. You want it to react. To elicit that immunoresponse is what gives, the mounted infection resistance. So to be expected and to be normal.
Mm-hmm. And can you share which shot you got? I'm sure
I'm a
some
Pfizer
people...
boy.
Okay. Like many of us.
I didn't ask, you know, I just showed up and they gave me what they gave me, and I found out afterwards. Not that they hid it from me, but it didn't even cross my mind to be like, hey, can I get that one? Oh.
In another world.
Yeah.
We can pick and choose, but not in this world.
Yeah.
And so your family wasn't impacted then by you getting infected?
Just emotionally.
Okay.
But they didn't. I'm grateful that no one else got sick in my family.
Yeah. Well, and I've spoken, I think with some friends who I guess you had contacted, and it was quite emotional for them to get the call from you because you thought you were saying goodbye. And that's quite scary for any of us. And especially for, someone as young as you, I was completely devastated when I heard about it. I didn't even know you that well. I only know your mom, but it bothered me.
Yeah. I know. I hope nobody has to go through that. And there's some people that obviously had it much worse than I, and they didn't survive. And yeah, it was, I don't know. I mean, you're in that moment, and when they say your life flashes before your eyes, it's not that it flashed, but I just started having these overwhelming memories, happy moments, things like this. And it just made me cry to think I wouldn't have that again. And it's just, yeah. And then when you call somebody to say, hey, just want to let you know that I really appreciated the way you worded me the last couple of years or the lifetime we've known each other. And you hear their voice talk back, and it's just like, it's just, and you just kind of, just cry all over again. It's leaving without a choice, I think, is pretty hard. Going into something and knowing I might not survive, I can choose to go into that, but you can't fight against it. People said, don't give up. You got to fight every day. How? I didn't know how. There was nothing to push against. I couldn't punch. I couldn't scream. I just waited, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And I had positive messages from lots of people. People let me know they were praying for me, for example, and great. That's fantastic. The positive energy. At least you don't slip into a complete and total depression, but you still feel helpless because I'm used to fighting physically with my hands, pushing, and you can't. And so being made that weak in that quick period of time was awful for me. It was not easy for anybody, but I never ever thought I'd be laid so low so quick.
Any other questions, families?
Alex, it's Joe again. So I think you mentioned that there was 6% scar tissue damaged in the lung. Did you have those MRIs before so that you have a comparison? Because I'm just kind of wondering, I wouldn't be surprised if most people have 6%, such small amount of damage.
Interesting. I'd like to hear why you think there'd be, well, let's pretend it wasn't 6, but why you think that everyone would have some amount of lung damage. I would say that those that, whether it's smoking casually or whatever, or those that live in or work in harsher fume environments, I'm thinking metalworking, welding, machine shops, stuff like that. Maybe that could make sense to me. And in my case, I didn't smoke or any of that prior to the end of sport, right? So it was complete abstinence throughout. So for me to have any amount of lung damage would be highly unlikely, but not impossible. But the biggest thing that they saw is to say that, okay, so for your lungs to get scarred, it actually requires quite a number to do it on itself, whether it's pneumonia or being a chronic smoker like this. You can have small micro damages, but those will heal over time, and you can develop something called fibrotic tissue, and that could become a little bit, stickier and lump into more scar type tissue, and that becomes hard to get rid of. But I appreciate the hypothesis in general. Like I said, I'm not going to hold you to 6%, but let's say it was 1/10% of the population. There might be something to that. I don't know.
Yeah. So, because to me, it doesn't sound out of context for someone to have 5%. I'm sure if they did MRIs on our kidneys and our livers and all these things, maybe not for a 12-year-old, but for someone that's have lived for 25 years, I don't think it would be uncommon for someone to have a little bit of that sort of damage. And it could be environmental, it could be through the air. A little story.
Mm-hmm.
Two men worked side by side at John's Manville pipe asbestos production.
Mm-hmm.
One was dead at 50, and they worked the same shift. One was dead at 50, and the other one is still alive at 80. So, just a little story. That's it.
And we all know a smoker that's died at 90. The body is pretty amazing with what it can survive. But to your point, both of them probably sustained similar amounts of lung damage, and it killed the one probably through cancer, and the other one probably lived with damaged lungs for all we know.
Well,
yeah, we never know.
And I think the point is, I wish each of us had a crystal ball that could say we could predict or anticipate in the future as to what would happen. I mean, we all partake in things like, drinking, smoking, activities that might be at risk, because we always have this strong sense of survival, thinking it's not going to happen. And if it happens, we're going to be okay and we're going to get through that. But I feel from a lot of the stories and a lot of the people that have been impacted by COVID in my world, we just don't know. It's unpredictable. Mm-hmm. And we don't know enough today to predict that me, as the person I am at the age and the health condition that I am at, if I were to get COVID, will I be one of the lucky ones who only gets a mild cold, or will I be one of the unlucky ones and end up in hospital and be intubated?
Mm-hmm. And John, to something just to add to my situation, they have hopes that I could actually recover from this. So as far as like even the scarring can actually eventually go away, because it's not the worst that they've seen, if that makes sense. And I will be doing follow-up scans actually. The study lasts, I think it's over a year to 2 years. They follow you just to see how you're recovering over time. So eventually, I mean, if we do this again, and I've had my other series of scans, I'll share the results with you.
So any other questions? We've got about 5 more minutes before we
Mary, it's John
put it in.
Again. Alex,
go ahead.
Just had a question. When did this occur? This past March? Sorry, when were you?
April.
In April. Okay, this past April, not last. So
right.
Tell me, before they recommended you to have the vaccination in the schedule, did they do antibody testing on you to see if your body naturally produced antibodies to the COVID?
No, they didn't, but they also don't need to. It does, but it doesn't last very long. Well, naturally, they found that it could last. Honestly, some of the longest that they had seen. So in that year lead up to April, 3 months. It's like a cosmic joke. You go through it so bad, so intensely, and you won't have enough genetic memory within the T cells to go, okay, we can do this now forever. And it could be maybe 2 weeks of antibodies, could be 3 months, but definitely nothing to say, okay, I'm safe. Because a lot of people think that they can just have this natural immunity to it. And unfortunately, it's scarily not really enough. So I could have caught, who's to say I still won't, but there's a chance I could catch it again within a month of getting out of the hospital and all that. And that's just not something that I was willing to play with. So.
Okay, no, great. You know, it's just that my son, Jamie, I see is on the call. He's a healthcare worker, pediatric dentist in Texas. And I told him to join the call because he got vaccinated, if I'm not mistaken, Jamie, in December, January with Pfizer, 3 weeks apart. And I think he took it upon himself to get antibody tested months later. And of course he had antibodies. So I just thought that was interesting that they wouldn't test you as a COVID survivor to see if you had that. That just, it's just an interest, you know, I just
sure.
find that interesting. Like
well,
many of us have been, we've had our vaccinations in January, and if I can, I'm going to avail myself to an antibody test just to see. And I'm one of those. I don't mind if I get a booster. I don't care. I'll have 3 shots, 5 shots. That's fine. But your story's got to resonate with those who are hesitant, because you are so caring and sympathetic and empathetic to others, and it hurts to pass it on to someone. And my feelings, I don't understand why those who aren't getting vaccinated don't feel the same. And just like Mary said, it's a lottery draw. We don't know how sick we're going to get. We've even been vaccinated. We don't know if we'll get it. We might be sick. And that's what's hard for many of us to understand, that there are those who say, oh, I'll never get it, or I'm strong, I'm immune. But your message just resonates. And I'm hoping, I know you spoke to the staff by Zoom at Copernicus Lodge. I'm hoping that, my gosh, how does this story not resonate with them? And that's just my feeling. And I know
and I appreciate you saying so. And I guess to your point of the antibodies, during my stay in the hospital, I mean, of course, I did tons of blood tests. So I do assume that there is some kind of data that they don't necessarily have to share with me to have a pre, and then perhaps down the road, we could do a post. But already having the first round of Pfizer, I assume I'm already going to be on track. And sure, there's a potential where having the sickness and then getting the first round is almost like getting 2 shots. But as you had said, if I get 3, I get 3. You know, I'm not going to wait.
Wonderful. I hope everything works out great. Thank you very much for sharing this.
Okay, one last question and then we'll wrap it up. Anyone? It's your chance to ask whatever you want.
Hello, it's John Watsky. Question.
Go ahead.
Hi, Alex. Hi. Thanks for sharing your story with us today. I'm just wondering, if you look back at your journey through this situation that you had with COVID, is there any regrets, or is there anything that you would have done differently looking back, hindsight, at the journey that you went through? I know some of it was out of your control, but in maybe just dealing with family, or is it how you approached through, how you went through the medical system in this regard?
If I'm being harsh on myself, taking that business trip when I did set me up for this situation. So even though I was following the guidelines and you know, I wasn't going against the current lockdown setup, and I was doing all the, you know, washing my hands and stuff like this. As Mary pointed out, the hindsight game, had I known how sick I was going to get, I wouldn't have taken that trip.
All right, thank you.
Okay, well, I think that's a wrap. We're at 7:30, so we want to thank Alex so much for his honesty and his compassion in sharing his story. I'm sure it was hard. It's hard to have to go back and relive some of those memories, but we really appreciate the firsthand account, because you know, hopefully none of us will have to go through it. We have had residents at Copernicus who have had COVID and who had not a happy outcome. And I'm hoping and praying that we won't have any more infections among staff and residents and families. So thank you so much. Alex, we really appreciate
no
you helping us out. And we're seeing clapping hands among families. So
little question, will you be competing again?
No,
When?
I've retired. I've retired years ago. It's already been 3 years, and I'm happy for it. It's my body's had enough. I'll have arthritic scars to prove it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks again.
So as I said, this session will be recorded, and I will be sharing it with the Copernicus community and also the wider community, because what Alex has shared with us is 100% gold. So thank you, Alex. And dziękuję bardzo, Alex. I wszystko najlepszego. And thank you, families, for participating in tonight's session.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you guys. Trzymajcie się. Bądź zdrowi. And see you guys. Hug each other. Well, excuse me, don't hug each other. Hug your family that's within your zone. Love each other. Protect yourselves and protect the ones around you. And yeah.
And get vaccinated. Please get vaccinated. I can say it because I want everyone to be safe. So
yeah.
Thank you.
See you guys. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Alex. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.